MBs and gents, it's no secret that recent political events have revealed to us that the kind of ultranationalism, white supremacy, misogyny, homophobia and all manner of other bigotries that many of us associate with the Western world of decades ago is still alive and well and crawling with haste out of the woodwork. I say revealed to us, but I think that's the privileged blindness showing. Members of disenfranchised groups have seen this coming and warned us of it for a while. Like a lot of people, I wish I had the answers, and I wish I could give people the reassurance they really need right now. An issue that should concern everybody is climate change, as Noam Chomsky explains in his interview with Truth Out. I think it is important to spend a few moments pondering just what happened on November the 8th, a date that might turn out to be one of the most important in human history, depending on how we react. No exaggeration. The most important news of November 8th was barely noted, a fact of some significance in itself. On November the 8th, the World Meteorological Organization delivered a report at the International Conference on Climate Change in Morocco, which was called in order to carry forward the Paris Agreement of COP21. The WMO reported that the past 5 years were the hottest on record. It reported rising sea levels, soon to increase as a result of the unexpectedly rapid melting of polar ice, most ominously the huge Antarctic glaciers. Already Arctic sea ice over the past 5 years is 28% below the average of the previous 29 years, not only raising sea levels, but also reducing the cooling effect of polar ice reflection of solar rays, thereby accelerating the grim effects of global warming. The WMO reported further that temperatures are approaching dangerously close to the goal established by COP21, along with other dire reports and forecasts. If you'd like to read more of this interview, there's a link in the description. Regarding employment discrimination against LGBTQ people, something which the Trump administration planned to legalise under the umbrella of religious liberty, which apparently overrides secular liberty somehow, I'd advise people wherever possible to boycott businesses that engage in this practice. As someone who believes in wealth redistribution, this will do something towards redistributing it away from companies that do discriminate and towards those who don't. This is by no means perfect, as it's still capitalism, but it's a start. Regarding health, as I understand it, while Trump does intend to overturn the Affordable Care Act, Obama made sure that health insurance companies won't be able to refuse cover to people with pre-existing conditions, and that parents will still be able to add children onto their policies. This is not much, but it is something. If you are someone who won't be able to afford their medication if the Affordable Care Act is overturned, please don't be hesitant to set up crowdfunding to help pay for your medicine, and if you are someone with disposable income, please donate to those in need. This, again, is not the perfect way to redistribute wealth, but it's the best option available. Regarding women having access to safe and legal abortion, as I understand it, Obama again has made sure that states, even the heavily religious ones, won't be able to defund Planned Parenthood. This is, again, something. When it comes to science and education and secularism, Trump and Pence tick every box of opposition to these things. They're anti-evolution, they deny the reality of climate change, they believe in gay conversion therapy, they believe businesses should be able to refuse to employ LGBTQ people in the name of religious liberty. Now, if you think YouTube atheism is going to be of any use in the fight for science, education and secularism, forget it. YouTube atheism is a subculture that has demonstrated time and time again that they don't have the first clue how to engage in activism. Their idea of activism is drawing the Prophet Muhammad once a year. Worse than that, some of the biggest channels in this subculture have been actively encouraging the rise of this new theocratic America. Even the more moderate voices in this community have largely served to trivialise these very issues, as though in this oh-so-enlightened modern age, we don't need feminism or any kind of social justice activism, because all those social bigotries are a thing of a bygone age. I'd like to think that the election to office of a misogynistic, homophobic, transphobic, racist, ableist, xenophobic monster, who I am not shy about calling a fascist, might be a wake-up call to those who think social justice activists have been complaining about nothing all this time, but I'm not optimistic. It is very telling how screwed up some people's priorities are when they're willing to throw education, environmentalism, secularism, humanitarianism, etc. under the bus, because they've somehow convinced themselves that the biggest threat to civilization right now isn't climate change or unjust hierarchical structures of privilege and disenfranchisement or lack of education, but rather political correctness. Some people have talked about how backhandedly great this might be for music and counterculture in general. Well, I suppose if a few generic white middle-class hardcore bands writing a few songs with generic titles such as "Fuck the System" is what you consider great, then okay, but for some people, marginalised people, this isn't just an opportunity to indulge in counterculture. And again, climate change is everyone's concern. This is a very serious and frightening situation that needs to be tackled with real action, direct action. Democracy is not and should not simply be about putting a vote in the ballot box. Democracy means power is in the hands of the people, and one of those powers you have is freedom of assembly. I've noticed the right really don't like freedom of assembly, and it's not difficult to see why, because it means people they don't like get to be heard. It's important that people take to the streets and protest, and that they take advantage of modern technology to engage in citizen journalism. Report what happens and make sure people know what's going on and where. On this note, I'd like to encourage those who consider themselves liberal to consider the stifling limitations of this soft left position. Society needs radical change, and for radical change we need radical politics, not dithering around trying to change a corrupt system by using that very system. I don't expect people to become anarchists overnight, just as I wouldn't expect anybody to embrace any school of thought without proper investigation into it, but I would hope that recent events will serve as a prompt that their position needs reconsideration. A couple of quotes I would provide for consideration. The first from Martin Luther King. "I must confess that over the past few years I have been gravely disappointed with the white moderate. I have almost reached the regrettable conclusion that the Negro's great stumbling block in his stride toward freedom is not the white citizen's counsellor or the Ku Klux Klanner, but the white moderate, who is more devoted to order than to justice, who prefers a negative peace, which is the absence of tension, to a positive peace, which is the presence of justice, who constantly says, 'I agree with you in the goal you seek, but I cannot agree with your methods of direct action,' who paternalistically believes he can set the timetable for another man's freedom, who lives by a mythical concept of time, and who constantly advises the Negro to wait for a more convenient season. Shallow understanding from people of goodwill is more frustrating than absolute misunderstanding from people of ill will. Lukewarm acceptance is much more bewildering than outright rejection." Not as generic and malleable as "I have a dream," but perhaps that's why it's not as famous. The second quote for consideration is from Assata Shakur. "I have never really understood exactly what a liberal is, since I have heard liberals express every conceivable opinion on every conceivable subject. As far as I can tell, you have the extreme right, who are fascist, racist, capitalist dogs like Ronald Reagan, who come right out and let you know where they're coming from. And on the opposite end, you have the left, who are supposed to be committed to justice, equality, and human rights. And somewhere between those 2 points is the liberal. As far as I'm concerned, liberal is the most meaningless word in the dictionary. History has shown me that as long as some white middle-class people can live high on the hog, take vacations to Europe, send their children to private schools, and reap the benefits of their white skin privilege, then they are liberal. But when times get hard and money gets tight, they pull off that liberal mask, and you think you're talking to Adolf Hitler. They feel sorry for the so-called underprivileged, just so long as they can maintain their own privileges." Comments such as the ones on screen now demonstrate Shakur's argument to a T. Don't shame people for engaging in direct action unless you genuinely have a better alternative, one that is not devoted more to order than it is to justice. Additionally, people should not feel compelled to be non-violent for its own sake. Violence is acceptable if it's to protect yourself, and to suggest this is a battle that can be fought entirely with words is naive in the extreme. To quote Leon Trotsky, "If you cannot convince a fascist, acquaint his head with the pavement." I'll close by suggesting another thing I think people can do, and I think in many ways it's much simpler. Stop agreeing to disagree. Stop agreeing to disagree with your brother-in-law who voted for Trump, or your aunt and uncle who don't agree with Trump about everything, and start openly challenging bigotry. Bigots are all too quick to tell us that they have a right to free speech. And they're not wrong, but what they don't have is a right to go unchallenged. People are entitled to be bigots, but that doesn't mean we have to make it easy for them. Freedom of speech is not freedom from consequence. Obviously, I don't want anyone to put themselves in any physical danger. For example, if your brother-in-law or whoever else is the sort of person who's likely to react violently to being challenged. But if the worst that will happen is that you don't get invited around for Thanksgiving again, or that you'll be off the Christmas card list, then perhaps it's for the best. Don't allow bigots the comfort of unearned social acceptability. Thanks for watching, and remember, justice over order.